Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got 10 more super weird knives from my own personal collection. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know that I collect knives. I have a lot of knives. Some practical, some not, and some are just downright weird. I'm going to share them with you guys today. I will link everything that I can in the description, but not everything is available. This is mostly just for fun. It will definitely be a laugh for some of you. So thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. Let's go ahead and get started here with number 10, a super weird one, the PMP Titano. God, what were they thinking? PMP always makes super huge, ridiculous knives, but this is a tactical gardening tool. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. More ridiculous is the fact that it is M390. Why, right? Is this practical? Do you have to ask that? The answer is no, it's not, but it sure is fun. The detent is absolutely wonky. I mean, you almost have to wrist flick it, right? You can also reverse flick it with that hole. Is it comfortable? No, not even close, but it does sort of inspire confidence. I don't know why. It does feel cool to hold. It is outrageously expensive if you can actually find one. But these are just fun. Not fun to use, not comfortable to hold. In fact, disengaging the giant frame lock is actually really uncomfortable given how sharp it is. But every time I pick this thing up, I just smile. This one's DLC, full DLC titanium. Actually, I think it's actually a PVD coating. It's not really DLC, but they were available in, you know, like bronze and blue and just standard stonewash. But yeah, absolutely wacky and super duper weird. Not at all what you expect to see when you think folding knife. Moving on here, the opposite end of the spectrum, number 9, and that's the Penko Bean. This is actually a really popular knife. It looks like, it makes me think of a Who from Whoville. This little nub on top, like the classic, you know, like in the old books, right? It's a double detent system here. You can actually see that little tab that you'd think would be a lock. It's not. It's a double detent knife, meaning that all you do to disengage is simply push down on the top, right? It's like a slip joint without it being a slip joint. So it's a non-locking knife. It is cool though, and it's fun to kind of fidget with. I've shown this thing off on a number of different shorts. It's just fun. It's very Serge Penchenko-y, or actually, people correct me. I think his name is actually pronounced Sergey, and I'm really sorry about that. I've been mispronouncing it for years without knowing. But it is fun. It is neat, little titanium double detent thing. Sergey is always doing really interesting stuff with knives, and the bean is, I don't know, it doesn't look like a bean. In fact, like no part of it looks like a bean, but it is a bean. So there you go. It's kind of weird. Moving on here to number 8. This is definitely a weird one, and one that was introduced here within the last year of the knife world, and that's the WE Knives and GTC Solid. If you're familiar with GTC, this doesn't look weird. To a lot of people in the knife community, they say, no, it's just a GTC. If you are not familiar with GTC, which I will remind those of you who were hardcore knife enthusiasts, the vast majority of people are not. The vast majority of people have no idea who GTC is. So this will be almost universally, by definition, considered weird. GTC has a super interesting design language. They're also almost exclusively custom. Like the standard ones that are made by GTC, or the custom ones, are all like hyper expensive, crazy works of art. Rarely they collaborate with companies, in this case WE Knives, to bring one of their absolutely wild designs to the production knife world. But in this case, they did. They also have the cool spring-loaded tab lock here, which is awesome. And man, it really flips like nothing else. This is legitimately one of my favorite knives in my collection, because, you know, I was able to get my hands on a GTC design for substantially less. Now, it's still a very, very expensive knife. I think these start at like $450. It is a titanium integral. Beautiful sculpting, machining, and the reflectivity on the frame, and then the blade, absolutely wild compound. What's the point of having a compound blade that looks like this? It is legitimately form over function. There are uses to compound blades, but in this case, it is 100% just a completion of the aesthetic. This guy's in M390, just absolutely beautiful. Every last element of this knife is incredibly luxurious. It's just a super wild and honestly, mostly inconvenient design, but it does still function. You know, I mean, it's still a plenty cut. The bearings are so smooth, I couldn't even fail it. It really does function. If you wanted to actually carry this knife and use it, it's probably one of the more practical knives on this list, but far from, you know, the standard definition of practical, right? Number 7, a weird one that you can actually get right now. This is a hulking knife that looks like the Tracker. I can't remember what movie made that famous. It's obviously sort of based on that aesthetic. But we have the MIDgards Messer and Fox Titan Tracker. And I honestly believe that it is Titanic, every sense of the word. These are titanium scales, a massively thick blade stock, huge backlock. But you also have a secondary safety that is an additional bar lock. This thing is ridiculous. So depending on how you define strange, right, you might just say that's not strange, that's not weird, it's just massively overbuilt. Let's say very different from what you would expect a folding knife to be. This is not a pocket knife because, well, you can put it in your pocket. Hilariously, it has a pretty normal-sized pocket clip. You can. Would you? I don't know. That's up to the individual. I wouldn't. This thing is ridiculously heavy. It's also ridiculously expensive. I think the blade steel on this is actually N690. A lot of people might be disappointed in that, especially for the price tag. But you know, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're really going to use this, like, number one, do I think this is capable? Honestly, I haven't tested it yet. But I would put my money on yes. Obviously, a fixed blade is still going to be substantially more durable than this, but will this hold up to abuse that is way outside of the range that you would expect a normal folding knife to kind of fall into? Yeah, definitely. Blade geometry, lockup solidity, just the overall, like the total amount of material here backing everything up, and the fact that backlocks tend to be super strong. I mean, this is, man, this is a beast. So, can you get this type of functionality and durability out of something that is, you know, much less expensive? Oh yeah, definitely. There's like a bajillion fixed blades out there that'll do the same thing. Do we commonly see stuff like this? No. Even though MIDgards Messer has definitely made a name for themselves, right? And they make a lot of wild and crazy stuff. Definitely versus your average folding knife, we do not see stuff like this. This is absolutely a weird one. Number 6, believe it or not, we have another knife from MIDgards Messer, one that many of you probably forgot about, and that's the the Boss. This is actually a prototype. Look at this thing. Absolutely insane. If you haven't figured it out, PMP and MIDgards Messer love to make wacky overbuilt knives. What is the purpose of an overbuilt knife if it doesn't offer, you know, a lot of extra functionality and durability? Because I'll tell you right now, this is still a frame lock, right? I wouldn't expect this to do much more, be capable of much more than your average titanium frame lock. In fact, it's just substantially more dangerous to the user and far more cumbersome. So what's the point? There's an odd fascination with certain sections of the knife world taking the elements that you would expect to find in a folding knife and blowing them completely out of proportion just because they can. And PMP, as you've seen with the Titano, and MIDgards Messer, as you've just seen with the Titan Tracker, love to do that. They absolutely love to do it, and they're really good at it. This is one of their most absurd creations. Is it easy to flip? No. Every time I flip this thing, I'm legitimately terrified. It's also incredibly smooth because it runs on bearings. The blade, for some reason, is absolutely gorgeous. Why did they do a near mirror polish on this thing? I have no idea, but they did. It also has a huge grave digging apparatus on the back. I can only assume, given the nature of this thing, that's probably what that is. Absolutely insane. Huge slabs of titanium. I think the blade steel is CPM D2. They like to use that a lot, right? And people are always kind of up in arms about the steel choices that they select. But I would ask, what premium steel is appropriate for this, right? I mean, you could argue some of your non-stainless, super tough stuff, your 3Vs, your M4s, maybe, I guess. The whole thing is such an impractical build anyway that kind of goes out the window. But whatever your thoughts on that. This is a weird one. We don't see this type of stuff ever. I mean, I can't think of another folding knife that looks like this at all. Number 5, we have got to talk about this new knife from Winterblade Co. So this is actually a magnetic. This is coming out on October 23rd, and it's not that I was like wanting to, I don't have like affiliate links or anything like that with Winterblade Co. But it is something that I wanted to talk about because it is interesting in the sense that a magnetically assisted knife is not common. In fact, it is so unbelievably uncommon that the only company that I can think of that has ever done one is Winterblade Co. Now, I'm sure that they kind of exist in one way or another, maybe in the past, but not very often. This is legitimately a knife where you pull back on the switch and a magnet assists the blade into the open position. It's technically not a switchblade, I guess. He has information on the website. By the way, this is called the MIRE, manufactured by Kunwu, and with a Van X blade. Excuse me, my allergies. Oh, that was a gross noise. I'll probably just leave that in there anyway, but manufactured by Kunwu. Super cool, super fidgety, and definitely not something that is incredibly common. The overall profile is not that weird, like the way that the knife looks, but the way that the knife operates, you can actually see one of those magnets in there. But the way that the knife operates is definitely strange. There's no part of my muscle memory that's really prepared to, deal with this opening. Like, there's nothing familiar about this because every knife that I have handled up to this point operates in a completely and totally different way. And furthermore, I'm actually pulling back on the knife to throw the blade forward, which is so strange, but so cool. Very metallic sounding. Oh, it's so cool. The MIRE is awesome. This is going to be expensive. You can pre-order these on October 23rd. I don't know when you guys are watching this, but probably a couple of weeks out. It is very, very cool. And the lockup is completely and totally solid. It looks like it might be a little wiggly. And what's happening there is when I'm deploying it, I'm not releasing the button fast enough. So if I just pull it down and hold it, you can kind of see like it's a little bouncy, right? The lock doesn't engage until you let go of that button, right? Once you let go of the button and it's all the way out, there's no movement at all. It is surprisingly solid. Brian Winters always designs the coolest operating elements and the coolest locking elements, but the biggest consistency is his lockup is always completely and totally solid, whether it's on his own custom knives or his production collaborations. The MIRE is super weird and super awesome. Moving on here, a knife that I feel like a lot of people probably forgot about, but I got to bring it up again anyway, the Artisan Cutlery Proponent. What on earth is going on with this knife? This was weird the day that I saw it the first time, and it is still weird now. This is one of the newest premium versions in S35VN with the polished fuller that's very similar to the polish on the MIDgards Boss prototype that I just showed. It also has huge studs that look like Pokeballs. I don't know why. I mean, this knife is so different than anything. It's not only different from like the knife world, right? But the MIDgards stuff and the PMP stuff is on theme. If you look at Artisan Cutlery, they've made some weird stuff, but this is so out of place. You can still buy this knife, by the way. This is so out of place. It legitimately looks like it was at one point way bigger, like it was a machete or even a sword, and the blade broke. It is one of the most aggressive looking Wharncliffes I have ever seen. It also has the additional pin. Now, I've got it in the case there, but you can see that hole right here. What's that for? There's an additional locking pin that comes with these knives. Whether you get the budget version, yes, there's an inexpensive version of this, or you get the premium version, you get an additional locking pin, making it whatever version you get, whether you get the frame lock version or you get the liner lock version, you have that, and then you have an additional secondary lock pin that keeps the blade locked out. Does that mean that it's as durable as a fixed blade? No, it does not. But it does make it more, slightly more reliable in a situation where you're going to be abusing it a little bit. I wouldn't do it, but yeah, it does. This is just, it's such a crazy knife. It's such a crazy knife and super cumbersome and ridiculous. Why did they make it? I have no idea, but it is neat, right? For a lot of people that find a lot of joy in the aesthetic of the Praetorian tie and no joy in the price tag, this is one of your better bets. It's got that big, thick, crazy aesthetic, very tall, right? It just doesn't cost nearly as much. So yeah, super weird. Moving on here, probably the knife that I put in the thumbnail. What the heck was this thing? It looks like it might be a lighter. Lots of people have questions about this. This, how does it open up? Let's see if I can do it the cool way. Ready? Ready? Wow! This is the AGA Campolin Dragonfly, and it is a monstrous piece of crap. Don't waste your money on this. It is not well made. I think I bought this on Blade HQ when it was available like months ago. And, you know, as everybody in the shorts video loved to point out, that this is not the first time that this design existed. I mean, I think Cold Steel did something with it a long time ago, and countless other companies had similar designs, right? But this is technically a form of gravity knife, and it opens up in a very interesting and unique way. I will point out that the like the manufacturing quality of the blade and the blade grind, right? The fit and finish, I guess. None of this is good, right? I paid like $75 for this knife, and it is legitimately a $15 knife. The blade is 440C, locked out. I wouldn't rely on it too much, but locked out. There's a little bit of movement here. It's a little bit tricky to get that part to disengage. It's also incredibly slippery, and you are super likely to run your hand up on the blade. In fact, just deploying this thing, you're incredibly likely to accidentally cut yourself. The dumbest part of this knife is the fact that if you don't whip it out the right way, the blade can come down and actually contact the frame. I know you guys are cringing there, but I've already done it so many times it doesn't even matter. This is a stupid, stupid knife. It is ridiculously overpriced, but it is kind of a fun thing to play with, right? A lot of people tell me that I'm doing that wrong. I'm supposed to just like go up like this. Hold on, let's see if I can do it, right? Yeah. Okay, it's a little scary either way. It's kind of fun though. It's definitely weird. It's just like an unorthodox knife. Like you don't see stuff like this very often. But I never did review this, and it would be pointless. It's just bad. Like it's just a bad design. But it's definitely one of the more unique knives that I have in my collection. And moving on here to number 2, had to zoom out a bit because this one is gigantic. This is the MIDgards Messer Odins toothpick folding kukri machete thing. This is the knife that I kept joking about on both YouTube Shorts and on TikTok, that people kept sending me a video, like a couple of different videos of other content creators that had this knife, and they're like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And if you know, I actually own an even larger folding knife from MIDgards Messer called the Fenris, which I showed off in the last video. And I kept, I made a joke out of it, and I said, stop sending me the video. I know about it because I own it, and I also own a bigger one, right? But yeah, this is that other one. Believe it or not, it is actually smaller. This knife, for some reason, has a flipper tab. Yikes. I do not recommend you buy this. Number one, I don't recommend you buy this. It is funny. If you love stuff like this, like, yeah, knock yourself out, right? I don't recommend you buying this assuming that it's going to be a serious long-term tool. Yes, it does have the bolt that I was talking about with the artisan cutlery, where you can, like, I think it goes in on the other side. You can stick it in here and screw it in, and now you've got a serious tool. Now, I don't know. I mean, you're still relying on the liner lock, and this pin. Like, if you saw what happened to the Vortex, right? I broke the lock on the Vortex, the MaxAce Vortex, with the pin in it. But, people pointed out the relief cut was squared off. Is at like a 90-degree angle, and that's why it snapped. This one does not have a 90-degree angle. That being said, I still don't know that I would trust my fate to this object with the combination of the bolt, which is huge. It's about 1/3 of an inch thick. The combination of this secondary bolt pin and the liner lock, which is pretty substantial, right? This is a huge, scary object. This is actually... I got this earlier than almost anybody. This is a prototype. The scales are aluminum. I think they actually make a titanium version of this. I think the blade steel CPM D2. It is incredibly thick. It's just such a ridiculous thing. If you absolutely have to have a folding kukri object, I think it'll do some light chopping just fine. I wouldn't consider this, as good as like an actual fixed kukri. Obviously, this is like a two-handed sort of venture, but it's definitely weird. Definitely weird. Nobody is going to look at that and go, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see those all the time. No, you do not. This is a weird knife. But as you've seen with a few examples today. Excuse me. MIDgards Messer is just kind of a weird company. And last but certainly not least, we have a very special guest with us today. Many of you have already seen this knife, but I can't help but show it off again. This is my latest custom from custom knife maker Dalibor Bergam out of Croatia. This is the same person who designed the Dore from WE. This is an entirely handmade knife. A lot of people are going to say, what's so weird about that? It's just a super duper custom knife. I feel like it's safe to call this kind of weird. What's the reason for the gloves? It's to keep my fingerprints off of the beautifully hand polished frame and blade. This is a handmade custom, technically zirconium Damascus integral, but this material is a proprietary material. It is a sole authorship material made by Dalibor Bergen. He calls it Daltanium. It's got a combination of commercially pure titanium, another composition of titanium and zirconium, and his process makes this quite a bit more vibrant than what we would normally see, even with titanium Damascus that's got zirconium in it, the stuff that we see from like Riyadh. This is wild, and the blade shape is also very, very wild. A lot of people like to say that looks, very similar to the Stitch. Interesting fact, Dalibor Bergam and Sebastian Berengi are actually really, really good friends, and their design language has rubbed off on, each other for a very long time. In fact, here recently, within the last 2 to 3 years, I think Dalibor and Sebastian Berengi of Borka Blades, that's the original designer of the Stitch, actually collaborated to create a Stitch together. You can actually go see that. It was made by Dalibor Bergam. You can actually go see that on his page. This is a beautifully mirror polished Sanmai Damascus that is also made by Dalibor Bergam. You can see the layers in there. This is a zero etch. Sorry, I've got a little bit of debris on there, a little bit of fuzz. But there's no etch. We can see the layers in there, but what he's done is he's allowed the acid to eat into the composition here, into the layers enough to create depth so that when he goes back to mirror polish it, you can actually see them. A lot of people on, social media, like your TikTok people and, you people who don't know what the heck they're looking at, thought that it was a laser engraving. It's not. It's actually the depth of the layers that you're seeing, and the reason you're still able to see them is because of that depth. But the mirror polishing on it, I think, is just absolutely stunning. Very unorthodox blade shape. Very, very crazy. This is called the Unnamed, by the way. That's the actual name of this knife. Absolutely incredible and just bizarre for a number of different reasons. Not in the sense that, you don't see stuff like this in the custom knife world, or if you're new to knives, you probably say that looks like something from the gas station, right? Welcome to the knife world. That's a fun journey to go on, to discover what it is that you're actually saying there. But I'll let you discover for yourself. Yeah, we do see bright and colorful things in the custom knife world, but even in the custom knife world, it's very rare to see something exactly like this. This is a wild, wild thing. That will conclude, let's open it up for the outro here. That will conclude my, my 10 weird knives. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found something weird. Obviously, this is not something you can go buy, but anything else that I've got that I'm able to link, I will put it in the description. You guys can go check it out if you want to. Thanks so much for watching today. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.